Hello, and now it's time for Outsiders Weather and the Skeptics Ice Age Watch, where the beleaguered residents of Moscow are shivering through the coldest summer in recorded history and the coldest August since records began over 150 years ago. And not to be outdone in the Ice Age stakes, a bitterly cold winter is heading to Canada in what one writer has dubbed a polar coaster of a winter. Our long-range forecast is for yet another freezing, frigid, frosty winter, writes Peter Geiger in the Farmer's Almanac, warning that the biggest drop with the most free-falling frigid temperatures is forecast to take hold from the prairie provinces into the Great Lakes during the final weeks of January. During this time, the Arctic air could cause temperatures to drop as low as minus 40 degrees Celsius, he writes, with possible snowfalls of up to 70 centimetres in just a single day. Good news, of course, for the manufacturers of Canada Goose, the desperately expensive luxury cold weather gear popular with Hollywood lovies. Someone else who will be happy with the forecast is this rather tubby, well-fed, rotund and happy polar bear who hasn't got the memo yet that he's supposed to be starving to death because of climate change. Indeed, dying polar bears have long been an iconic symbol of the global warming hoax, often portrayed as an endangered species thanks to the melting ice caps. But a new report last week suggests there's now an overabundance of polar bears living in places like Nunavut, and they are fast becoming a threat to humans. Inuits believe there are now so many bears that public safety has become a major concern, says a recent report in Iqaluit. Speaking of exotic wildlife, here's a Queensland goose, or is it a swan, a dangerous and prosperity-threatening species once known as a Labor federal treasurer. That is, for the time being, mercifully in hibernation. In an interview with The Guardian, Mr. Swan predicted that just as the 9/11 terrorist attacks upended global politics, somewhere not far down the track there will be a dreadful climate event that will similarly reshape global and national politics, and it could well be on our own doorstep. Climate change equals 9/11, really? Well, I suppose traffic did grind to a halt yet again this week in Brisbane's CBD, thanks to yet another insane and pointless Extinction Rebellion demonstration organised by yet another Queensland goose, pictured here protesting about Adani, which probably helps explain why Anastasia Palaszczuk's poll numbers have plummeted faster than Sydney's overnight temperatures this week. Also suffering a dramatic fall is the credibility of Mr. Obama, the former US president, and I would say an American goose. Obama, who this week splashed out $14 million on this beautiful beachfront mansion at Martha's Vineyard, which the blurb describes as a home for generations to come. Problem is, over a decade ago, Barack was busy telling us
is a recognition that the threat from climate change is serious, it is urgent, and it is growing. Our generation's response to this challenge will be judged by history. For if we fail to meet it boldly, swiftly, and together, we risk consigning future generations to an irreversible catastrophe. No nation, however large or small, wealthy or poor, can escape the impact of climate change. Rising sea levels threaten every coastline.
Indeed, computer modelling done by Obama's own officials shows Obama's mansion, which you can see here in this aerial shot, will, in a generation or two, be here, underwater, thanks to rising sea levels. So Obama has spent $14 million on a house for future generations of Obamas that will be underwater, according to the very mob he himself set up. talk about putting your money where your hoax is. Also, making a complete goose of themselves this week, Sydney's Northern Beaches Council declared a climate emergency. Maybe they should look out their own window. As we can see here, the high tide is precisely the same at Bilgola Beach now as it was over a century ago. Yep, that's a methane-emitting horse down here where today Zali's 7-seater petrol-driven SUV would be parked. And surprise, surprise, here's a chart showing maximum and minimum temperatures at Cape Otway Lighthouse in Victoria going back 150 years. Not much global warming there, is there? And speaking of which, here's a Victorian goose. According to a new expert report, electric vehicles in the eastern states are responsible for more carbon emissions than regular petrol vehicles.